The Ravagers are Marvel's very own group of space pirates that raid, plunder, and ride through the stars. With a constantly changing membership and dozens upon dozens of factions, keeping track of this crew is a challenge even for seasoned fans. Yondu Udonta, a Centaurian captain exile and the man who raised Peter Quill. Yondu Udonta is one Ravager that's gotten plenty of screen time and action throughout the MCU. His group is one of the more famous ones out of the 100 Ravager factions. It all started with two things. One, Yondu used to traffic children from across the galaxy for ego, delivering them to the living planet. This was a pretty sick business deal they had going on. Two, Yondu found out that Ego murdered all the children he ever delivered. When it came to Ego asking Yondu to kidnap Peter Quill from Earth, Yondu's conscience finally kicked in. I guess some kids are much luckier than others. The next time we see Yondu is in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 1. He's trying to track down the orb, a rare artifact that houses an Infinity Stone for the broker. This is a fat payday for Yondu, so imagine his surprise when it gets snubbed out from under him. To be fair, he did raise Quill as a Ravager, and their whole thing is kind of stealing, so in the first Guardians, we see him try to recover his loss by going to the broker directly, trying to find out who he's selling the orb to. Once he finds out it's the Collector, he goes to him, only to find Peter once again beat him to the chase. He and Quill have a pretty complicated relationship. He definitely does give him a lot of privilege, but at the same time, he's pretty done with him too. This relationship also strains his position as a captain, even though he's pretty respected otherwise. Things worked out eventually because Yondu and Quill decided to get the orb together, which was now in the hands of Ronan the Accuser. One thing led to another, and Yondu on Xandar once again found himself in his element, shooting his enemies as much as he could. Once Ronan was taken care of, Yondu confronted Quill so he could get the orb, and Quill gave him just that. It wasn't until after, when the Ravagers were celebrating their victory, that Yondu found out he had been duped yet again. He got a fake orb from Quill, but at this point, he wasn't even mad. And for good reason, too. Yondu isn't just a musclehead, although he really talks that way. He's very good at what he does, and with his Yada arrow, he's capable of taking on a small army by himself without breaking a sweat. He controls it through that red fin on his head. It's not actually hair. It's a cybernetic implant that lets him control his arrow through whistles. Despite his skills as a Ravager, karma comes for everyone. In Guardians of the Galaxy 2, it definitely came for Yondu, who broke the Ravager's code. When Stakar Ogord found out about his intergalactic child trafficking scheme, he gave him the most severe punishment a Ravager could get.
You think I take pleasure in exiling you? You're wrong. You broke all our hearts.
Just a while after this, he gets a visit from Aisha, the Golden High Priestess of the Sovereign, a race of, well, golden people. She wants to hire him to track and deliver the Guardians for $1 million. Yondu, being the person he is, stuck a tracker on the Guardians' ship, Milano, and found them easily. However, he had no intention of delivering the Guardians to Aisha. Instead, he wanted to recover the batteries that Rocket had stolen from the Sovereign, which would only go for $250,000 Aisha offered. Yondu has a big soft spot for Star-Lord. That's why he never really gets serious about taking him down. His crew does sense this, and the elephant in the room finally gets addressed when Kraglin's had enough. After this, Yondu's faction broke into two separate groups. All the Ravagers who sided with him were ejected into space. Then Taserface took control of the rest, and he showed the captain how they really felt about him. He was thrown in a cell with Rocket, who told him that Peter was on Ego's planet. Groot passes them both by, and Yondu asks him to get his fin. But Groot instead gets underwear, a desk, an eye, a lizard thing, and, well, ironically, it's Kraglin who gets him out of this bind once he finds out about how his friends are going to be killed. After he's freed, he obliterates every Ravager present with his Yaka arrow, as well as blowing up Taserface. He immediately heads to Ego to help Quill. This would be Yondu's final battle, and he ended it the way his story started, by saving Peter Quill's life. When Groot exploded the bomb planted in Ego's brain, he helped Peter escape by ascending to space with him. Thing is, Rocket only gave him one spacesuit, and he made his choice. Yondu lived as a Ravager, but he died a Guardian.
What's that?
He says, welcome to the frickin' Guardians of the Galaxy. Only he didn't use frickin'.
Kraglin Opfonteri. Throughout his career, Yondu had one trusted right-hand man, Kraglin Opfonteri, born on Xandar and raised as a Ravager for most of his life. He was devoutly loyal to Yondu and had a close friendship with Quill, often being the one Peter would share things with. Despite this, Kraglin would follow any order Yondu gave, including putting a bounty on Peter's head after he stole the orb. He was even willing to support Peter Quill's execution. He was also by Yondu's side on most of his important missions, like when he went to see the broker. Kraglin also assisted the Guardians on Yondu's orders during the Battle of Xandar. Despite his loyalty, Kraglin had doubts. Yondu is constantly letting Peter go made him think he didn't care about the rest of the Ravagers much anymore, which he finally expressed on Bearhurt during Rocket's ambush on the Ravagers. Kraglin had watched in silence as Taserface ejected his friends and beat up his captain. But despite this, he eventually did free Yondu, as previously mentioned, feeling incredibly guilty for his role in the mutiny. When Yondu had sacrificed himself, Kraglin held a funeral for his captain. Here, Peter passed on Yondu's fin to Kraglin. From this point on, Kraglin became the captain of Yondu's Ravager faction, and the next time we'd see him was during the final fight against Thanos. Kraglin led the Ravagers into battle, serving as a chunk of the Avengers' aerial forces. A couple of years later, Kraglin left the Ravagers and became one of the Guardians, going on many missions throughout planets with him. Also, on every single planet, Kraglin would marry a new person.
We're married.
What did we tell you about jumping into new relationships?
Then I shouldn't be doing that.
Yeah, you can't get married on every single planet we land on.
Sometime later, Kraglin relocated to Nowhere after the Guardians bought it from the Collector. He worked on repairing Nowhere after Thanos destroyed it. Here, he would spend his time with his fellow Guardians, a superpowered dog named Cosmo, and a lot of arrow practice. By the way, Kraglin's really bad at controlling that arrow. He's stabbed Drax, Nebula, and a bunch of others with it unintentionally. He briefly controls it when Adam Warlock attacks Nowhere, but it just bounces off him. But this was important, because it led to him finally mastering the arrow when the Hellspawn attacked Nowhere, with a little bit of motivation from Yondu. After the defeat of the High Evolutionary, Kraglin stayed behind with the rest of the new Guardians of the Galaxy, led by Rocket. Just like Yondu, he chose to live as a Guardian, inheriting his legacy. Taserface. You could say that Taserface is the one who set the stage for the internal chaos between the Ravagers. He was in doubt about the captain's leadership even before Stakar exiled Yondu. The moment Kraglin spoke up about the issue, he immediately betrayed him, dividing the faction into two. From there on, the guy went on a power trip.
Suppose it's time for a change in leadership.
Also, if you're thinking, who names themselves Taserface? You're not the only one. Despite his boasting, he's a small-time villain who quickly gets taken care of when Yondu gets freed. Probably one of the most unlikable characters in the entire Ravager crew. Stakar Ogord. He's probably the most senior Ravager we have ever seen. In his earlier days, he met and married his fellow Ravager, Aleta, and traveled throughout the galaxy with her. He also rescued Yondu from a life of slavery under the Kree Empire, giving him a new start in the Ravagers. Stakar is a man of few words and discipline. He takes the Ravager code extremely seriously, and he doesn't tolerate anybody disrespecting it. He won't even do business with people who he thinks don't respect it. Despite his attitude, he has a deep love for the Ravagers and its members. He takes no pleasure in exiling Yondu, and looks genuinely relieved when the Ravagers unite again. He even takes in a time-displaced Gamora into the clan. He was giddy when she was finally back with them. He's also on very good terms with the Guardians, helping them infiltrate the Orgoscope. He is also a pretty strong combatant, though this side of him is reserved more for the comics. In both the MCU and the comics, he has a suit that resembles a hawk. This is a nod to his role as Starhawk in the comics. He had a much more fleshed out backstory there, being half human, half artificial being, as well as having a huge interest in archaeology. Aleta was also his adoptive sister in the comics, instead of being a fellow Ravager. Stakar's power set from the comics isn't really carried over onto the MCU, but in his own storylines, he's an incredibly powerful hero with a massive lifespan, even being able to match Thor in hand-to-hand combat. He's also merged together with Aleta, courtesy of the Hawk God, and spends a lot of time fighting for control over his body, with both sharing the power of Starhawk. Speaking of the comics, did you know who the original Guardians of the Galaxy were? They were made up of Yondu, Martin X Tanaga, Charlie 27, Stakar Ogord, and Aleta. The fact that they traveled together in the movies is also probably a nice homage to that. Martin X Tanaga. Every captain needs their first mate, and Stakar's was Martin X Tanaga. In the comics, he comes from the Pluvian race, a species of crystallized humanoid beings that are incredibly durable thanks to their physiology. In the movies, he doesn't get that much screen time. We do know he's been running with Stakar for a long time though, since before Stakar exiled Yondu. He remains a loyal member of the crew when the remaining Ravager factions join together to become the United Ravagers. Martin X also seemingly has a decent friendship with Gamora. Aleta Ogord. In the same way as Skater, Aleta's MCU depiction doesn't show off much of her power set from the comics. We also don't get too much time with her, but she was present at Yondu's funeral. In the MCU, she's a typical Ravager captain, good at thieving, tactics, and sneaking around, but in the comics, she's something else. While Stakar got the super strength side of the bargain, Aleta had control over light. She could manipulate it to make constructs, a lot like how Green Lantern makes his, and is a formidable fighter on her own, even being able to travel close to the speed of light. Mainframe. This guy is literally just a robotic talking head. That's his whole thing. From his looks, you wouldn't think he's a Ravager captain with his own clan. Mainframe used to go on adventures with Skater, Yondu, Elytra, and the other Ravager captains as one big motley crew. Not all the Ravagers were a fan of the disjointed nature of the Ravagers. Mainframe was incredibly happy when Skater proposed the United Ravagers idea. In terms of abilities, Mainframe is the technical side of the Ravagers. Hacking into something as fortified as the Bowie, the latest ship of the Guardians, was very easy for him. Krugar. In the MCU, Krugar is a Lemian sorcerer and Ravager captain, first seen when Stakar Ogord reunites his old Ravager crew in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 after Yondu's exile. What really sets Krugar apart is how he uses his mystic powers, especially through portals. In a band full of thieves, gunslingers, and tech-enhanced fighters, Gamora. The alternate version of Gamora also became a Ravager in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. This version's personality is a lot different than the one fans were introduced to originally. She's a lot more rebellious, snarky, and fierce. She also doesn't have the same connection to the Guardians, especially Peter Quill. This influences her choice to become a part of the United Ravagers. She's found a family for herself here and is doing pretty well for herself. She's even one of the new leaders. While she takes a break from her duties as one to help the Guardians in the third film, she eventually goes to nowhere again and gets a very warm welcome. Yondu's Loyalists. The members of Yondu's crew that did stick by his side all suffered for it when they were thrown out into space. You can recognize some people, such as Tulk and Oblo. It's a really dark scene. It seems like the senior members had Yondu's back. Even Horus, who definitely had feelings about Yondu and Quill, was loyal to him regardless. He even died for his crew during the Battle of Xandar. The Yondu Loyalists are really just bros. Fitzgibbonok, a skilled thief in the Ravagers, refused to give up Gamora's location when Aisha asked, no matter the consequences. We also saw some of the other factions at Yondu's funeral, including Charlie 27's clan, as well as Aleta Ogord and her clan. Taserface's faction? Essentially, half of Yondu's crew transferred to Taserface's faction. A lot of the small-time crooks that were side characters, basically. One of the many idiots who decided to side with Taserface was a small-time Ravager that ran with Yondu's crew for quite a while, but quickly switched loyalties. We don't really get to see much of him, but what we do see is pretty nasty. Then you have people who are delegated to guard duty, like Brawl. He was one of the people cheering on as more and more of Yondu's remaining crew got ejected out of space. You get to see how big the dissent in Yondu's crew really was through these side characters. Geef, a low-ranking member, was pretty pissed off after hearing Yondu's idea. Even some more senior members like Half Nut, you know that guy with the weird half-bald hairstyle? They ended up switching over to Taserface's side too. Yondu's favoritism really did a number on group morale. Whew, that's every member of the Ravagers for you that we've seen on screen. They have as many personalities as they do factions. Who's your favorite Ravager out of everyone?